you are going to learn English. You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally. But after you've done these things over a certain period of time, you can earn your citizenship, so that it's not something that is guaranteed or automatic. You've got to earn it, but over time, you give people an opportunity. Now, it only works, though, if you do all the pieces. I think the American people, they appreciate and believe in immigration, but they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it. So we've got to deal with that at the same time as we deal in a humane fashion with folks who have put down roots here, have become our neighbors, have become our friends. They may have children who are U.S. citizens. That's the kind of comprehensive approach that we have to take. All right?
It's an amazing thing. This was Patrick Bet-David who posted this earlier today and says, people are quick to forget what Obama said in March 18th, 2009. He'd be considered conservative Republican today. Common sense is timeless and always makes a comeback. The amazing thing is people will say, oh, he didn't realize quite how wrong he was back then. And he's actually evolved over time and not devolved. And totally not understand that when you don't have any principles and you are a boat floating in the ocean without sails, you just go whichever way the current is taking you. With actually no direction and no possibility of having direction. Oh, so that was Obama, 2009, people. And now we are 2025. I feel like I'm living in the future. Who remembers Y2K 1999? In 2009, Obama basically talking about what Trump is doing today. But today, Trump is deemed to be the inhumane, xenophobic racist. For actually implementing yet another one of his promises, deporting violent, criminal, illegal aliens. What I love is I'm old enough now to have lived through the Overton window shifting. And, people are in the chat. Yeah, I remember Y2K was going to be the end of the world. Does everybody remember the day or the year or the month? The time frame in which they stopped referring to illegal immigrants or illegal aliens as illegal aliens? And then they became it was such a it was a multi-step process, because they didn't go from illegal aliens to undocumented migrants. They went from illegal aliens to undocumented aliens, undocumented immigrants. Then it became undocumented migrants. Then it became economic migrants, and now it's just everybody's an asylum seeker. But we lived through that, and we lived through the world in which it was once upon a time absolutely insanely stupid to say defund the police, and then it became policy, because that slow drip, 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 eventually every drop of water will carve its way through rock if it's long and persistent enough. And we've lived through the era where it didn't just go from changing the rhetoric, homeless to unhoused, unhomed, illegal alien to undocumented migrant. And I forget the third one that I just said. Oh, for goodness sake. I forget what it was. The third one I just said 2 seconds ago. We've lived through it, and you change the meaning of words and you change thought itself. But you don't change what makes sense over time, and you certainly don't change what is going to be the negative consequences of what was stupid policy back in the day. Defund the police. It was defund the police. Everyone said, man, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then it became policy. And then they defunded the police. And then crime spiked. Part and parcel because they defunded the police, and all of those undocumented migrants in so-called sanctuary cities, I say not all of them, a small amount of them who commit the disproportionate amount of the crime. It's amazing. Policies have consequences. Elections have consequences. So Trump is now the president implementing the deportation policies with, I would say, what, cataclysmic, earth-shattering consequences. We're going to get into all of this today, people. There are the first 3 days now. What are we? Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, Wednesday to Thursday. We are in now we've entered the 4th day of the new age, the new era of the rebirth of American greatness. And it's going seemingly according to plan. There are some bad decisions, however, that are being made, and some people have some questions and some people have some concerns, and it's understandable. So today we are talking about, people, deportation. Homan, the new minister, the Secretary of Homeland Security, I forget his title now, I have to go check it up. Homan is on with Dana Bash explaining what's happening, and Dana Bash can't understand, A, this is what people voted for. B, this is what legal immigrants want. C, there are consequences to breaking the law. And 4, D, there will be incidental consequences to those who are the most egregious of the illegals committing crimes if they don't abide by the enforcement and choose to hide and then take down some of their other illegal but not necessarily criminal brethren. We are live across all platforms, people. For those of you who are new to the channel, we are live on YouTube, Twitter, Free Speech Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where everyone is above average. And we're going to end on YouTube and Twitter, and then we go over to Rumble, and then we have our after party on Locals for the supporters to thank them for supporting the work that we do. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Ellison. I don't trust him. We're going to talk about Sam Altman. I don't trust him. And we're going to talk about another bad decision that Trump made, his appointment for a head of Secret Service. Not that I don't trust him, but it's a man who I believe was partly responsible for what occurred on July 13th, who, from what I can understand, it doesn't even matter if he's been reprimanded or, learned from that. When you have a zero-fail mission and it fails, typically you don't get promoted. But we're going to get into it because Trump is the master of his own domain. Trump is the one who knows, especially when it comes to his own protection, what is best for him. And it's not in anyone else's, I'll say it's in their purview to second guess, to criticize, to critique, but it's ultimately his decision because it impacts him the most. We'll get into all of that. Are we live across all the other platforms? I'm looking over at Rumble, at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we have 2 tip questions. Viva, on the H-1Bs, this is from Textmaster. Just kidding. I can't watch live, so I'll have to replay later. Have a great show. Textmaster, thank you. I think we're done with the H-1Bs, although we're going to get into something equally contentious today. Because in as much as I'm willing to forgive Sam Altman, I'm not willing to forget. And in as much as, someone has a coming to the Lord moment, the length of time it takes to reestablish confidence is exponentially correlative to the degree to which it was broken beforehand. Smaller violations, it takes a little bit less time to reestablish confidence. Big violations, it's going to take more than a little stupid ass ambiguous tweet. Textmaster, good to see you. Adnilacat says, who has Trump's ear to tell him to stop the deadly mRNA train that is increasingly building up steam? It's a sexy project that Trump sees no downside to, but is on the fast track to our destruction. We're going to get to that. Because, again, it's the Overton window as well now. People seem to have forgotten that the first mass global scale of human experimentation with the mRNA jibby jab was not a smashing success, such that you don't leverage off of that failure to say, well, now let's apply it to other fields. We'll get to that. Just want to make sure that we are good on all across all platforms, and we are. All right. Flashback to the intro of the show. Obama, the most charismatic of scumbags. He was charismatic. I don't care what anybody says. Until you realized he was, I'm using the word snake, and I don't really like using that word because snakes are awesome animals. They're beautiful. And I'm going to use that again when I talk about Brennan, who's on the backdrop. When you realize that he was vile, disingenuous, would become the worst, the second worst, third worst president in American history, when you realize that he was a liar through and through, that he was either a devilish person himself, or at least the marionette of the devilish puppeteers. I'm talking about Obama, who did more to drive race relations back 100 years in America, who was the most lawless president, but he had such a nice smile. He was eloquent. But then when you realized he was selling you shit, his eloquence became something that I detested. Well, he was talking about illegal immigration. Can you imagine any politician, any Democrat today saying, you come to America, you better speak English? Holy crap, you can't even say that in Canada. You can't even say in Canada, you come to Canada, you better speak English or French, or you're going to learn English or French. No. I still consider Spanish to be the French of America, but I don't know how the dynamic of how Americans feel about that. In Canada, speak French or English. Those are the two official languages of the country. Imagine a Democrat today saying, you're an immigrant, illegal, you're going to go to the back of the line, pay a fine, and learn English, damn it. They actually make that as a trope of racism these days. That's how far insane the left has gone. Trump has started his rounding up and deporting of violent, illegal aliens, illegal immigrants. And the left can't seem to understand it. Tom Homan, here we go. Who posted this? This is Libs of TikTok, eh? Who posted this? Listen to this. Dana Bash. Where do I remember Dana Bash? You remember her from such propagandist networks at CNN. What was she doing? She did something during the election. It'll come back to me. These are the propagandists of the highest orders. These are people, and I'm talking about Dana Bash on the left, who will never suffer the consequences of the policies that they promote. They will never suffer the consequences of the lawlessness that they implement. They will never really care if eggs cost $13 a dozen. They've got all the money in the world. Rachel Maddow takes a pay cut. She's down to $15 million a year. Listen to her, and listen to Homan. Homan is the man.
You know, I think that there is some kind of image that people might have, given how much we heard President Trump and you in the months during the campaign, and certainly during the transition, talking about what's going to happen of people being rounded up, loaded on buses, and dropping them off on the border. Is that how you see this happening?
Well, I don't like the analogy of rounding up. Look, again, this is a targeted enforcement operation. The president's been clear on this. We're going to concentrate on public safety threats. But in sanctuary cities, where they don't let us take that public safety threat into custody and the safety and security of a jail, we have to go find them. If he's with others in the country illegally, ICE will not turn the blind eye to that. ICE is going to uphold the oath they took. They're going to enforce the laws enacted by Congress and signed by a president. And they're going to do that without apology. I mean, if any sanctuary cities force us in this position, that's exactly what's going to happen.
You know, I think that there is some.
This is the shorter clip, but she had trouble understanding that. So, if you are hunting people down, if you're enforcing the law and trying to deport violent criminals, and you incidentally come across other illegal aliens, we're not going to turn a blind eye. It is a terrible situation in a sense where there will be innocents that are going to get caught up in this. The children of people who have come into a country illegally are going to get caught up in this. Friends and family, they're going to get caught up in this. And there is a certain element of tragedy. When someone goes to jail, even if they deserve it, there's a certain element of tragedy. You know, like Homan actually said it, we separate families all the time. When a dad goes to jail for whatever, we're separating him from his kids. You don't get to say, don't put me in jail. I've got a family. You break the law, and you break the law with a family. Unfortunately, it's not on the law that you have exposed your family to the consequences of you breaking the law. And I think I had a decent analogy in terms of understanding the incidental, or in terms of highlighting and illustrating the absurdity of saying it's going to cause people hardship. Someone illegally squatting on somebody's house, they can get very comfortable in that house. And they can say, well, but I've made my living room here. My kids go to school in this area. Yeah, it's my house. You never had permission to come in here, and I want you out. I mean, it's the analogy between a home and a country and a front door and a border is pretty much perfectly analogous, except it's the government who owns the property in this analogy and not a private ownership of a house. You squat illegally in someone else's house that you know is someone else's house. You can't cry when you're told to get out. You can't cry when the police come and haul you out, no matter how nicely you designed your bedroom. And it's happening. And there's going to be some very, very, very sorry and hard issues that result from this, but that's what it is. And that's what Americans voted for. And that's what Latinos voted for. That's what Black Americans voted for in record numbers. But they don't understand law and order, and they don't want to, because it's not hierarchy, it's lawlessness. They need it for a number of reasons, and they need it for politics, because what they realize now is they can't rely even on the native immigrant population to continue voting for them blindly in record numbers. And so what do they need to do? We talked about it before the election. Shock and awe, flood like you've never seen. And so that you can change the future elections, you can change the demographics, and that you can change the outcome and basically get to a one-party state forever. And if we didn't avoid that by a millimeter when Donald Trump turned his head to the side and changed the course of history, you might never understand how close America came to losing its country forever. All right, so that was the intro short story. Trump is already on the verge, implementing, in the process of, not on the verge anymore, implementing policy, rounding up the most violent, illegal aliens and deporting them. And yes, it's going to hurt people. That's what happens when people break the law. They hurt not only themselves, they hurt friends and family. And if they have families and children, they've hurt their children. But it's not the law that did it. It's the person who broke the law. Now, speaking of promises, Trump comes into office and says, I'm going to pardon the Jan 6ers. And he does. And I'm trying to get Jake Lang in here to see what the update is on who might be left still in jail. But one person who's not in jail, and I think he's in the backdrop, you might remember this Jan 6er from such podcasts as Viva Fry. His name is Chance Upmore. I don't know if he's a member of our community. I think we met each other, or he reached out via Twitter. I don't actually know how that happened. He's a Jan 6er. When he came on to talk about his unique situation, he was talking about how he had been raided for January 6th and, charged with the misdemeanor bullshit. But while they raided him, they found marijuana, firearms in his house, and then they charged him with incidental felonies that were unrelated to, but resulted from the poison fruit of the tree of the initial raid for Jan 6. He came on, we talked about it. Even if he gets a pardon for the misdemeanor, he's still going to face the lifelong or long-term consequences of being declared a felon because of unrelated charges that stemmed from the raid. Turns out there's more than just Chance who have this similar problem now. At least 3 others in DC Gulag that I became familiar with. Ball was his last name. I forget their last names now. But there were 3 that I went over the night before last, or the day before last when we were live streaming the release. And there were 3 who they were found, guilty of parole violation, some other felony charge. There was a state Florida felony charge. And from what I understand, they have not yet been released from jail. And so the question here now is to try to raise a little bit of the awareness as to whether or not, I'm sure there's going to be some legal arguments, does the pardon encompass the fruits of that crime for which there was a pardon or not? And so Chance Upmore's coming up here because I want to get a bit of an update and see what's his situation since the pardon. I'm sure he's happy, but also somewhat unfulfilled. Chance, let me see. You're in the backdrop. You need to, there you go. Okay, we got one thing going. Now you got to enable your camera. I hear audio.
All right, let me try and figure this out, my friend.
Do you have a plug-in camera?
Yeah. Let's see.
Now let me see here. Let's see.
I close this. Last time it popped up so easy. I don't know what's blocking it this time. Let me try and figure this out. My fault.
That's over to there is. Did we use Studio last time, or did we use StreamYard?
I think we used Studio, and I just enabled my camera. Now it's saying that the camera is in use somewhere else, but it is not in use.
If well, you can just unplug it and use the native camera to the computer.
No, my computer doesn't have one. Just give me one moment to figure this out.
Yeah, and while you do that, I will see. If there's any update on the other. Okay, so let's see if we can get this. Well, Chance, while you do it, if we don't get that, we'll deal with that. We'll pretend you're a little red dot with a white circle. Remind everyone you had a misdemeanor. Was it the picketing and parading, or was it the what misdemeanor were you charged with in relation to January 6th?
Yeah, I ended up getting the misdemeanor trespassing charge, basically.
Okay, misdemeanor trespassing charge, and then you got some felony charges, which was drug possession and in conjunction with firearm possession.
Yep. When they raided me, they found.
Hold on. I'm not sure if you take your screen out, if we can still hear you. Huh. Okay, so leave it in here like that. All right, you can't get your camera to work.
I don't understand why not.
Have you got a phone?
Yeah, I do. Let me see though. This is not making any sense.
Don't worry. It doesn't have to make sense to not work.
Yeah, right. I don't understand why it's not connecting. But yeah, I can here. Let me drop out for a bit, figure this out, and worst case scenario, I'll hop on my phone.
Okay, go for it.
All right.
Viva, well, while we do that, I'm going to take some of the chats here. Not all vaccines are bad. The way they schedule them is horrid. Some are unnecessary, says Gen X Brat over on Rumble. Viva, just go with the interview to Stephen Britton. We'll give him one more chance to get the video, and if not, we're just going to go with an audio interview. And I'll see also if Jake can pop in. Live now, if you can pop in. And I'll go over here on CommieTube and see what's going on. Get to the chat here. Operation Warp Speed 2.0. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that after. I want to get Chance's update. And then Chance had a couple of Rumble rants ready when you are at Chance Upmore. So that's it. I mean, a bunch of there are a few now who are going to have some issues because they faced charges that were unrelated to January 6th, but that resulted from the raids. And I don't know if it's going to be something that you can get to the attention of the powers that be, but we'll do our best to have it to make it happen. Chance, you there?
Yeah, same issue.
Okay, well, forget about it. Let's do audio. Okay, so what's your situation now? So you've done your time for everything, and you didn't do any time for the felony, but you're still a convicted felon, and I think we discussed it, but what sort of consequences does that have for daily life?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks being a felon. I'm still on federal probation. Can't own a firearm. There's certain things that, like getting an apartment will be more difficult and stuff along those lines.
Getting loans and getting anything involving credit checks?
Yeah, definitely.
Let me ask you this. In terms of firearm restrictions, is it true? Someone had mentioned that you're not even allowed being in the same domicile as another firearm owner. So do other firearm owners within the same domicile, are they not allowed possessing firearms, or are you not allowed being in that same domicile?
Yeah, so and that is an issue. And so what Ben Martin actually that's the reason why he had to turn himself in, because of Jan 6, they were investigating him, and basically he had some kind of charge restricting him from owning a firearm. And his wife or his girlfriend, from what I could see, had a locked safe that he didn't have a code to that had firearms in it. So by definition, he was charged with it, even though you're supposed to be allowed, as a felon, you're supposed to be allowed to, your wife can own a firearm, or your roommate, as long as it's in a locked safe that you have no access to. Yet that's the exact thing they arrested him for. It's crazy.
Chance, this is you in this is a good picture of you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So everyone, this is who we're talking to. Babyface Chance Upmore, although this was 4 years ago, so he might have a few more gray hairs as a result of what they've done to him over the last 4 years. So you're stuck with the felony conviction for now. What practically has what was the practical result or outcome, or what has happened since the pardon? Has it changed anything?
As of this moment, I'm not too sure. There is legal pathways to argue that, based on the wording of the pardon saying that all charges related to January 6th, that any raid that came as a result of January 6th is also related by definition. Mm-hmm. So there's that option, and I think really that's a long shot and it's going to get shut down by my judge. I would have to file a motion to dismiss, and the judge would deny it, and then it would go up the chain to the circuit courts and eventually the Supreme Court. And it's a long shot, but I think the best route right now for most of us, and let me just say there's a few of us that are dealing with this. I'd say there's two categories, or even three. There's people like me who received a federal charge when we got raided, a separate federal charge. Those people can be remedied by either a second pardon or some kind of order that says all charges stemming from January 6th are covered as well. Then you have people that receive state charges. I put those people into two categories, because one category would be someone who received a state charge in a liberal state, and someone that received a state charge in a conservative pro-Trump state. In those situations, we could all rally behind and try and get the governors of those states to pardon them for the evidence that was used against them in the state charges. But with the liberal states, those people have an even harder pathway. But one person that comes to mind is Brad Holliday. He was prosecuted by Alvin Bragg for a gun crime that as we know, Alvin Bragg is very soft on crime unless it's a J6er, someone else that was charged with his exact gun crime. And just to clarify, his gun crime was basically that he owned a firearm with a certain type of magazine that is legal in every other state, but 8 years ago, New York made it illegal. So other people have been charged with that. Most recently, a guy, I can't remember his last name, but his name was Sadiq, and he was charged with it. And Alvin Bragg, slow walked his case, and 2 years later, he still wasn't locked up. And Brad Holliday's situation, they ran that through quick. Within a year, he was charged and convicted, and he served prison time for that. And so now he's in a situation that's even worse than mine and some of the others, where even if Trump was to put out a pardon for any charge stemming from January 6th, it wouldn't cover him.
Well, it wouldn't cover a state charge. This is why some people were. I know at least one of the Jan 6ers in D.C. had a state charge out of Florida that people were saying, we got to put the pressure on DeSantis to give a state pardon, or whatever the process is in Florida if it's a pardon panel. But yeah, the president can't give pardons for state crimes or state charges. And in some states, it's not even the governor that can do it. It has to go through this pardon panel.
Yeah. So it's definitely some of us are in a more easy situation. I think the key here, I want to thank everyone that stood by the Jan 6ers and supported us and helped us out. But I do want to say that the job is not finished. We have to do everything we can to make sure that every person that was there on that day that received any type of charge, unless it's something extremely terrible, which I haven't seen anything like that. We need to do what we can to get those charges dropped. And I think in the state cases, I don't know, this is something I thought of that I'm not sure if it would work, but I think if Trump was to put out another blanket pardon to make all the charges stemming from January 6th null and void, maybe he could put some type of wording that says any evidence found during the federal investigations into Jan 6 cannot be used in state trials. And then that would at least give some type of pathway for the people charged with state charges in liberal states to then file a motion to dismiss using that, which would, of course, get denied by the New York judges, but could make it up to the Supreme Court and maybe give them some relief that way. But other than that, it's a really tough hill for them to climb.
Well, I mean, I'm sure your lawyer will try to make the argument, but yeah, it's motions and it's costs, and in the interim, you're still stuck with that felony. Now, and over on Rumble, Denise Antu says, so they raided your house for a misdemeanor. The former administration absolutely destroyed our Constitution. I mean, they did, except at the time they were calling it insurrection. So they were raiding people's houses for suspicion of seditious conspiracy. Man, Chance. All right. I mean, it's not much of an update. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what pressure people can put on, and hope for the best in your situation. I mean, I know now of at least you and 3 others. So there's 4 people of the Jan 6ers who are going to have lingering state charges or felony charges, which were independent but stemming from. And
from the list I've seen, there's Jeremy Brown. He's in prison currently. Ben Martin turned himself into prison yesterday. Elias Costianes, he has to turn himself in for his sentence sometime in February. And Brad Holliday, and I'm sure there's many more. I think the key here is to keep getting the message out there that there are people like this, people like us that are suffering from this. And I've been spamming on Twitter recently, and I'm trying to calm down on it because I've been spamming so much, but I think we really need to get the message out there. And I think we need to have like a united message of basically saying we need pardons for all charges stemming from the raids of January 6th, and all evidence found during the federal investigations is invalid. And that'll give a bunch of people pathways to end it. But yeah, as of now, I'm trying to stay optimistic. I hope that Trump comes through and, puts out another pardon. But other than that, it's just a waiting game, really.
All right, man. We'll snip and clip this, everybody, and put it out there and tag who you think needs to hear it, and hope that something happens or something gets done.
All right. Thank you, Viva.
Chance, I'll see you on Twitter.
All right. See ya.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Share this and kick. Okay, I didn't kick him. He left. All right, so that's Chance's story. It's a pain in the ass. And we talked about it well before the pardon was even issued, and I didn't realize that there were let's just say 4 to a half dozen other Jan 6s who are suffering the similar consequences. All right, people, we're going to go over to Rumble right now. Here's the link to Rumble, and the rest of the show is going to be the banger part of the show. If anyone wants to come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where it's not a question of grifting people, we have an after show where we like to thank the supporters, the people who make it possible for us to continue doing what we're doing, and it's an exclusive for the supporters only. That being said, the entire podcast goes on podcast afterwards, so even if you don't want to be live when it happens, you'll still get the fruits of that afterwards. But come over to Locals if you're so inclined, and if not, the link to Rumble is up on the top. I'll read a couple of chats before we make the migration and we see that number drop from 1.2 thousand on YouTube to 0. But before you leave, make sure you subscribe to notifications turned on, etc., etc. Nif Ranziel says Jeremy Brown was moved. They don't know where, but suspect Philly to be killed by gangs. Anyone in Pennsylvania that personally knows government officials, get on phone. We'll see if Jake can get on and also give us an update, because I know that they were thoroughly, intimately involved with everything that was going on. Over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com says, Viva, don't let the idiots on X accuse you of grifting get shit down. No, I was like, it doesn't. It drives me nuts. But it's especially when they're called grifter watch. The thing is this, I have to rationalize and I have to say they're probably not even human. And if they are accounts that seek only to gain attention from that type of destructive interference in otherwise productive dialogue. Okay, so what we're going to do now, still not banned here, says exactly. If they can't lock up, they will find other ways to destroy you and your entire family too, if necessary, to them. And then Zam369 says, Viva's hair is noble. It's a little knotted, a little dry. It might be getting a little long and a little crazy, but that's it. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to end it over. Yes, good. We're at 1,000, although if we get to under 1,000 on YouTube, come on over to Rumble or vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and I'll post the entire thing, podcast format, and the entire stream, or the clips thereof afterwards. Updating now, ending on ComicTube, free speech. Here we come, and we're going to talk. Ellison, mRNA, because it's not all bad. I'm not coming out here and saying Trump is trying to bring us down to the fascist COVID medico-techno tier. Now, it's not that cut and dry. But I can understand that people have some concerns. And then we're going to get into Donald Trump's pick for Secret Service, Chief of Secret Service. Ending on ComicTube now.